Hi, I'm Gina, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that is designed to have real talk around all things midlife and strategies to help us live a more vibrant second half. It is my deepest desire to help other people shift the conversation toward empowerment, toward vibrancy, toward excitement about what life has for us and what we can bring to the world, how we can each individually shine our light. So I invite you to grab a cup of something wonderful, to join me each week or when you can, and join me in my living room to have these conversations. And if you are enjoying this, please take the time to subscribe wherever you listen, rate my podcast, and share the episodes that help you, the episodes that encourage you. Let's build this community together. Welcome to my tribe. I'm so grateful you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast. I'm so glad you're here with us in 2022. This year, we are going to be taking some journeys with some amazing women who are doing things differently after 50. For 4 years, I've talked about the fact that you can do whatever you want to do in your midlife if you put your mind to it. And today, we are going to be talking to Betty Franks. Betty Franks is a woman who became a full-time artist after 50. And I reached out to her on Instagram because I've been following her for quite some time. And I thought, what a great way to kick off my new inspirational journey with my tribe, but to bring a woman on that I've watched walk this truth out. So Betty, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Hi, Gina. It is so good to be here. And thank you for being a follower of my art journey.
It is really a joy. Honestly, if you don't follow her, she is Betty Franks Art.
Yes, with the dots in between. So betty.franks.art.
On Instagram.
Yes.
You all know that I've been really pursuing an art journey seriously for a couple of years since quarantine started. And she's one of the artists that I have played around with her technique to challenge my way of looking at design and color. And so this is an art conversation, but below all of that is a conversation of a woman who has been through transitions and has moved in a completely new direction after 50. And I want us to talk to women who are doing it. It's not just a pipe dream. It actually happens. So Betty, why don't you tell us what led you to become a full-time artist and why after 50?
Yeah, sure. So, no journey is a direct journey. So there was no direct path to get here. I spent the majority of my life in corporate America, mostly on the customer service side. So I've got a lot of experience under my belt in terms of, being in an office environment, being in front of folks, leading teams, managing groups of people. And I got to a point in my very late 40s where the job became so stressful. I remember this one time going to a massage place so that I can, kind of loosen up some of my tight muscles. The gentleman, he just felt so bad because he couldn't help me. I was in so much stress. My whole body was in so much stress that he just couldn't even loosen up some of those really tight places. And that should have been a sign right there. I should do something right then and there. But no, we kind of take these signs and we don't do anything, but we kind of absorb them. And it wasn't until like a year later that I finally said, okay, I just can't do this anymore. This is really bad for my health. It's bad for my mental health. It's obviously bad for my body as well. So I ended up leaving corporate America. And at the time I was married and my husband painted homes. So interiors, exteriors. So I partnered up with him for a few years. And we did that together. I took care of his customer service and marketing side and really, helped his business tremendously with the skills that I was able to bring from my experiences. And then got to a point where I was able to have enough free time in my day to do other things. And so I started creating art. And what I really started doing was making these cards on the weekends. And this was for maybe a year or so before I quit my job because I needed some kind of stress release. I would spend hours, like on a Saturday, making these perfect little cards, like birthday cards and different types of, Easter cards. I remember doing those too, and stamping them and making them absolutely perfect. I had to redo them several times if they weren't perfect. And then I stumbled upon mixed media somewhere on the internet. Can't tell you exactly who it was I saw or what I saw, but to this day, I still remember that falling in love feeling. And it was just, oh my goodness, this is what I need to do. This is what I love. And it was all about, building up these layers and stamping. But if it was imperfect, that made it perfect. It was even better if it wasn't perfect. And this just opened up a whole new world to me of being able to express myself in such a different way. And I have to say, being a manager and working in an office environment and doing spreadsheets and writing up presentations, I spent so many years making everything so perfect. And everything was, there was a justification behind numbers and people and all of that stuff. And being able to do this was such a release of all this creativity that I guess I had in me. Didn't know I did, but here it was kind of unfolding itself. And then after I did that for a few years, I then went into creating more with just paint. Although my love for mark making never left me, so I still continue to do that today. And it was in 2015 when I went to a workshop up in Canada, in Victoria. It was a wonderful workshop. It was week long and just absolutely fantastic. I'm still friends with so many of those folks. And for that workshop, I decided to put a line in the sand. And I said, from this day forward, I'm going to be an abstract artist. Now, this workshop had nothing to do with doing abstract painting or anything like that. It was all about doing your own thing. But I decided I really wanted to do abstract work. And it was something that didn't happen overnight. I was starting to observe more abstract work that I was really connecting to and falling in love with. And it was a direction that I wanted to go because I was kind of floundering. I wasn't sure, what kind of artist am I? What do I like to do? I never went to school. I don't know how to draw a person or realistic stuff. It's just not in me to do that. And somehow this abstract work was just really, it was speaking to my heart and my soul. It's really hard to explain, but there were some pieces that I was looking at that just on the inside, it was like I was glowing. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to create that kind of work that just makes me so happy on the inside that it's really showing through my artwork. And so that was the direction I took. It took me years to figure out my style. It was in 2018 that I finally did. And it was when I was visiting my parents in Croatia. They lived there. They're retired there now. And that's where they grew up. And so in the spring, my mom and I would go for walks, and there would be wildflowers everywhere. And we would be picking bouquets of wildflowers to bring home. These are just small bouquets, but we had them all over the house in these little glasses, even our drinking glasses, because we were running out of little vases. And it was then that I realized after creating a few pieces that I was creating those flowers that we were picking and those flowers that I was seeing. And that's how I've come to realize what my style was and why I create the way I create.
That is so fantastic, because the journey from corporate America to being in Croatia picking wildflowers. I mean, so many iterations of yourself were happening during that time. What was your emotional journey during this time? So this is your practical journey. You went from corporate America to crafting to cope with corporate America to helping your husband's, at the time, his business. And then you start to paint, you go to a retreat, and it's just this it's kind of like a windy road, isn't it? You
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. It was a very windy road. And, I didn't wake up and say, I'm going to be an artist. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. It's one of those, when you say, never in a million years would I have thought. And the road was one where, when I left corporate America, it was kind of like, well, what am I going to do now? I mean, this is what I knew for so many years of my life, getting up, going to work, working 40, 50, sometimes 60 hours a week. And it was such a shift to then be working with my husband and working really part-time, mostly worked morning hours and then having that freedom in the afternoon. So again, that, okay, how do I fill my time? What can I do? And just as the months went by, I just really started enjoying that time that I had to myself in the afternoons. And even though I didn't know what I was really doing, it was just getting in there and doing that I really enjoyed. And then the shift of, okay, so there was a shift at some point where I said, okay, because we sold that painting business and kind of officially retired, but yet needed to do something else with my time. And so I spent more and more time creating art and posting about it. And back then I was just on Facebook. And when I would post, I had people starting to ask me if they could buy it. And it was like, oh, wow, okay. And that opened up a whole new, can of worms, which is how do I price my work? How do I package it? How do I ship it? And so this big learning process started happening where not only was I learning how to be an artist in terms of creating art, but how to be an artist in terms of running an art business. And having the experience in corporate America, I would say really helped me on that end because I was able to take those skills that I learned and apply them to being able to run a business. I think one of the things that we kind of get hung up on as we say, well, I want to be an artist, is we forget that if you want to be a working artist, then you've got to learn the business side of that. And that's where I really spent a lot of my time and really dove into that as well, which was every day. Even to this day, I'm always learning something new. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm listening to videos on YouTube. I'm listening to audiobooks. I'm always wanting to learn something that I can bring to my business on a regular basis.
Mm. You mentioned perfection and the journey to imperfection, which in my brain goes, okay, well, technically we live in imperfection. So it wasn't you in my mind, you didn't say this is my processing. You were working so hard at perfection and you finally accepted imperfection. I think that's part of the journey that we have to take, no matter what we do, is accepting that imperfection is in the large part of our journey. And if we can release the need to be perfect, I think our abilities to pursue whatever it is we want in our midlife become more possible.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And it is, you've got to let go of so much so that you can move forward. And what I mean by that is that whole 80-20 rule, where, if you're 80% there, go with it. It's like launching a website. So many folks are kind of hung up on, well, it's not 100% perfect. I don't have a lot of art on there. I need like 50 more pieces and I need to do this and that. You don't. You just put it out there and then you continue to work on it. And I think I learned to do that throughout the process of learning how to run my art business and learning how to be an artist as well. It's like, when I'm creating art, it was like, okay, it's not 100% perfect. That's okay. Let's call that one done. Let's do another one now. Let's practice. Let's do some more. And that's one of the things, about being an artist and becoming good at your craft is practicing, right? I mean, we learned that way back in elementary school. The more you practice, the better you get at it. You're not perfect. And you're never going to be perfect. And I hope that you're not perfect, because then it's going to keep you from wanting to learn and wanting to experience more and experiment more and just to have fun and play and do all those things.
Mm. You're talking about practice and play. And that's one of those things with art. I can apply it. I understand what you're saying, because we have to remove our expectations of what it, quote, should be in order to really discover what it is. And that's in every area, but especially when you're learning something new, we have to yield to that, submit to that journey of learning. And I think it is really starting over. When I use the word reinvention, it's like, okay, you mentioned elementary school. This is a lot like going back to elementary school and submitting ourselves to that process of learning something new, maybe not being good at it at first, or at least in our mind, not good at it, because we're not always the best judge of our own journey. Right. But what you're saying is lean in, give it some time.
Absolutely. Lean in, but also know that you've got a lifetime of experiences that you're going to bring to that.
Yes.
So you're really not starting off in grade school. You are so many decades ahead of that, and you are ready to take those experiences and apply them. If you've got a passion to want to do something new and different, bring that every day, bring that passion every day, and that's going to help leap you forward. Maybe I shouldn't say leap, baby steps forward. I really believe in baby steps, because it's overwhelming to say, okay, I want to, be successful in this area. Okay, so what you're looking at is just, oh my goodness, that's so overwhelming. How am I going to get there? But when we break that down into really simple steps of, okay, this week, I'm just going to focus on these two things, just two things this week, and I'm going to get good at that. And then I'm going to, in a week or two, maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month, I'll add a couple of more things. And so it's a slow and steady, it's the turtle in the race, it's moving forward at a pace that works for you, and it's going to be different for everyone. Some folks are going to come into their second half with different experiences, and they may be able to leap forward a little bit faster, but slower in other areas. I think that as long as you are looking at taking into account what you've already learned, taking into account that there are resources out there to help you move forward faster, don't be afraid to use those. When I was learning how to be an artist, I was taking workshops. I didn't do everything on my own. I was looking to the folks who I really admired, whose art I loved, and I was learning a little bit from them that I can then later incorporate into my own artwork. And that really helped me move forward. In addition to that, it's the practice, practice, practice. I get folks who will message me and say, you make it look so easy. And I have to remind each person that I'm on my journey at a different rate than they are on their journey. I've been doing this for years. And although it may look easy, it wasn't easy in the beginning for me. And somebody coming in and just doing it for the first time is where I was 3 years ago. So in those 3 years, I have put in hundreds of hours of creating and experimenting and trying different things that I now apply to all of my artwork.
I hear you saying that looking to others, that learning, it's like, you've essentially been a mentor to my art practice. You didn't know, but I could see what you did, and you have this great YouTube channel, and I'm able to go, okay, there's a curiosity to the process. And we're talking about art specifically, but this could apply to any area. Who's doing something that you're interested in learning? Maybe we start there. Instead of thinking about it as a full reinvention, maybe we think, okay, what about this person and what they're doing intrigues me? Okay, I'm going to investigate and be curious about playing with it. Because, for example, these junk journals that people make, I bought a book cover that I thought was lovely, and I took a bunch of papers and I and I sewed it together and I made it. Do I want to do that? Is that what I want to do? No, but there was something really cool. Every time I look at that, that's a journey of learning a craft from someone else. And so I think there's a little bit of that play, back to the play, is that curiosity, being willing to maybe find someone who does something you love and try what they're doing. Just allow yourself to experience something, because it does spark things like, what about it did I love? Right. And I'm sure you went through the same thing. You asked yourself questions, right?
Yes, absolutely. And when I first started doing mixed media, I also did a junk journal. I loved doing that and making the journal and all that stuff. But is that what I want to do for the rest of my life? No, but I needed to try that. I needed to check it out and see what part of that do I like, what part of it don't I like. And if we don't stop and try out all these different things, we're not going to really figure out exactly what we want to do. And I think I think in our brains we know that, but we don't stop and say, oh, I'm going to just give this a try. I'm going to try sewing, or I'm going to try crocheting, or I'm going to try photography. You may not like any of those, but you're going to keep seeking and searching for something that you do love. Maybe you love coaching people. It has nothing to do with crocheting, but you tried out all this other stuff to figure out what you really love to do and where your passion is.
It's funny. The crochet idea is sometimes it's in the process of investigating something that we're not wanting to become, that we have epiphanies, because we're allowing our mind to move freely. So there may be something in the crochet process, or in the junk journal process, or in the taking a writing class. I don't know, that it may, because your mind isn't so focused on the thing, whatever the thing is, that it actually helps us to be creative in solutions, or it helps us to be creative in ideas. I think it's all extremely valuable. Like, you and I are the same. That junk journal was a blast. I loved it. I feel so proud of it. It's sitting over there and I'm like, I love it. I even did some gold leafing on the cover. I tried all these different things, and it's like, am I going to do that again? Maybe not. But there's something in the process of learning something new, I think, that gives us inspiration.
Absolutely. Yes. And, one of the things that I have done over the years, except for the first year of COVID, which is to take a workshop and to continue to learn. Even after I created my style and I found my style and it found me, that I continue to take workshops. I just signed up for one for this year. And one thing that I say to myself every time I go to a workshop is, I'm not going to learn every single thing that's being taught here. But if I can walk away with one thing that I can apply to my own art, it's a huge success. And I've gone into workshops with that mentality, and I've always come out of it with something that I learned that I could apply going forward. We can't, again, sometimes we're bombarded with so much stuff, but we learn to filter those things out and figure out, okay, what's my heart speaking to the most? What am I being drawn to the most? And that's the one thing I'm going to keep and continue to pursue.
I often wonder if we've lost that ability to hear our own quiet voice saying, oh, I love that. Because we do spend a lot of years, and I don't mean this in a martyr way, but we do spend a lot of years pouring into other people's lives, whether it's through work or being a mother or building a business or whatever. The first half of our life is a very busy time, and it's very often outwardly focused, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it's normal, but we have this we turn a corner where there's this opportunity to meet ourselves anew, because we have been through so much. You mentioned this earlier. We bring so much to this season of life. We almost need to meet ourselves and ask those questions, right? What about this brings me joy? What about this am I interested in? Why don't I like that? For example, I love color. I did makeup for 32 years, and color was always the thing, right? So I will probably not be your neutral artist. For me, I don't love brown, and I've not loved brown for my whole makeup artist career. So And that's okay. But the more we know about ourselves and we allow ourselves to become maybe different than we were earlier in life. Did you find that to be true? There's a little bit of a shift in maybe that was important at this season in my life. And now this feels more in alignment to who I'm becoming. Did you go through a journey like that?
Definitely. I went through a journey similar to that, and I have to totally agree with you. The first part of our lives, especially if we're mothers, we're raising a family, we're taking care of the house, we are working in addition to that, and we're juggling so much that we are ignoring or we are tapping down our own needs to take care of everyone else first. And I really do feel that, the after 50, I started tapping into my own needs. What do I love? What do I like to do? And it's that whole guilt thing. It's taking me time to move away from that guilt of, I want time by myself. I want time to create by myself. I want time to do my own thing that I love. And it's giving ourselves the permission to be okay with doing that, the permission to say, okay, I can come first now and I can do those things that I've been wanting to do for years. And to also stop, I think it's so important, and we don't do this enough, is like you said, we need to stop and ask ourselves the questions. Well, what do I like to do? What do I like to pursue? And it's interesting, a lot of times I answer those questions when somebody else asks me that question. It's like, wow, okay, why didn't I even think to stop and ask myself that question 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Why is it now that this person that I had coffee with yesterday asked this question? And it's like the answer is so obvious now. So giving ourselves permission to do those things, but also stopping and understanding ourselves in our second half. We are different people now. That maybe the kids are out of the house now. Maybe you've got an empty house and you've got lots of room to fill it with what you want to do. And taking that time to slow down and to figure those things out. Again, it's a journey. It's not something that you figure out overnight and say, whoop, okay, that's it. I'm an artist tomorrow and yep, all done. And, I'm just going to move forward with that. It's been a slow and steady journey for me.
I asked a question earlier, then we went off on this fantastic journey, but I'd love to hear more about the emotional side of this for you. What was the emotional journey like for you as you've gone through this? Can you kind of share a little bit of what that was like? Was there fear? Was there excitement? Was there doubt? Like, what was your emotional journey?
Definitely an emotional journey in terms of when you are starting out in a new career, a new hobby, a new love, is that self-doubt, that what is this? What is this thing I'm putting together? Oh my God, why am I using that color? Oh my, I don't even know what this is. I'm just going to, I don't know, set it aside for now. So that self-doubt was happening. And then the whole side of running a business, the fear of, well, I'm going to fail, or I'm not pricing it right. I'm not making enough money. I'm fearful about, asking for what I believe I should receive for the art that I create. So going through that whole imposter syndrome of, am I really an artist? I mean, it took me years to be able to say I'm an artist. Today I say it proudly, but why do I say it proudly? That's because I've spent years of creating, and I've had years of people telling me that they enjoy my work and they like my work. So it kind of goes hand in hand with going back to that whole, putting in the practice and creating time to master your craft so that you can get to the point where you don't have that imposter syndrome, and that you can, easily say what it is that you do and say it with all the passion that you have inside of you, and not be fearful to spread that and to share that. So I went through a lot of emotional stuff building this business, slowly over the years, and not just, my artistic part, but going back to the running the business is, there's so much to learn when you're an entrepreneur, and you are pretty much on your own. So reaching out, trying to figure out, who can help me? Where can I learn how to do these things? There was a lot in terms of trying to figure out the right words to explain this. The fear, I guess, the biggest part was the fear of, of being able to do it right and to be able to grow my business.
Mm. So I was taking some notes because you were sparking these little thoughts in my mind. The first thing I wanted to touch base was the imposter syndrome. Having gone to a lot of personal development events, influencer, just how to kind of move forward toward your goals. And that imposter syndrome, a lot of very successful people say that it never totally goes away. It's a little bit crouching at the door. So it doesn't seem like there's a moment where you arrive and you never struggle again. Like there's an evolution constantly happening in the confidence, it sounds like. Is that true for you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I went to a gallery last week where I was dropping off my art, and I was looking at other art that was there, and that imposter syndrome like crept up. And I was like, it kind of took me aback, like, okay, why am I feeling this way? But I was looking at their art and saying, oh my God, it's absolutely gorgeous, and the detail and the depth of it. And then I start saying, okay, I don't understand why people like my art. And, I went through that whole, it's just that negative self-talk. It's like, why do we do that to ourselves? Clearly people love my art. I know people love my art because they tell me, but yet I walk into this gallery where I see so many different artists, and immediately it's like a slap in the face of, feeling like, am I really good enough to be hanging with all of these other artists that are here? So you're right. It never entirely goes away, but I was able to stop myself and to identify quickly what I was doing to myself, and to cut it off as quickly as I could.
And the other thing is, piggybacking on this, is that belief, the things that we need to be aware. And I say this all the time, so anybody who listens to my podcast is probably like, here she goes again. But the things, including myself, we have voices in our heads that are not our friends, but we listen to them, right? And that belief is one of the things that can hold us back from this moving forward that you and I are discussing today. And there's a lot of patience and grace. Grace is a word that I've really worked on in my adult life. It's not something that was present so much in my childhood, but as I became a mother, I realized, wow, it takes so much grace in relationships, whether it's a marriage or a friendship or with yourself or with your kids. And so I feel like this transition, this reinvention, this moving toward a new version of ourselves, which isn't really new. I guess it's more of like, it's not
refined.
New. There you go. What a great word, refined. But isn't there a lot of grace and patience with ourselves in that journey?
There is. I think there's a lot of acceptance also, accepting where we are, where we want to go, and pulling that into our everyday life and being kinder to ourselves and more gentle to ourselves. And I feel that that's really an area that I've been trying to work on these past few years, because we do have that voice that we listen to. We know we shouldn't listen to, but yet we still do. And it's like I started questioning, well, why am I listening to that voice? I recently listened to a podcast where a lady wrote a book about, and I think the title was How We Should Tell Ourselves Better Lies. And I'm probably not quoting that correctly, but basically what she was saying was that these negative words that we're telling ourselves, these negative sentences and thoughts and such, are lies. And so why aren't we telling ourselves better lies? So instead of, well, I can't paint, why can't we just say, oh, I can paint. This is how I'm painting today. This is how I want to express myself today. Instead of, well, why did you do that? And why did you put down that color? And that looks ridiculous. And you have no idea what you're doing. So trying to turn those around, I think, is so important. One of the things that I found, and I discovered this years ago, was I was creating and I was listening to a video on YouTube. I wasn't watching it because I was busy creating. What I discovered was that when my brain was engaged with what I was listening to, I was much more freer to create. And that negative self-talk didn't have time to get in there in between what I was trying to listen to. And so for those folks out there who are creative, I highly encourage you to listen to Gina's podcast and listen to audiobooks so that you can engage your brain and free up your right brain to be creative and do its thing, and just knock out that negative self-talk.
It's like distracting a 2-year-old. Here, play with this.
Exactly.
To get off on another tangent.
Exactly.
It's interesting you talk about telling ourselves better lies. I think that question, why not me? We have spent a lot of years doing things for other people. And if we acknowledge what have we actually accomplished in our life, maybe it was for other people, but we have a resume, man. We're coming to midlife with a long list of skills, abilities, experiences, growth, emotion, right? We have such depth. And I think that's what makes this second half so rich, because like you said, it might feel like elementary school, but we're not in elementary school. We have so much that we bring with us, the good and the bad. Let's talk a little bit about, just because it's interesting to think about art as a language, as a communication, because that's what it is. It's a way of expressing our emotions. It was a great stress reliever for me during the beginning part of, this quarantine and the crazy stuff that was going on here in California. If stuff was happening everywhere, but I live fairly close to LA. So things were really hot for a while, and it was stressful having daughters that are out in the world and you're worried. And I found art to be a place where I could process my emotion. And so I would love to know a little bit about, like, what does mark making do for you? How does it help you communicate? Or how does art really, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. I'm in that same spot as you. Like, what is the word? I want to know, as you became an artist, as you've gone through this process, how has this really met a need for you emotionally or mentally in your mental wellness? How has it also helped you in your mental wellness?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of my mark making, so folks who are not familiar with my art, I like to start off with mark making. And mark making being, I love to start with just a normal number 2 pencil. And then I also like to use colored pencils, crayons, a variety of different tools such as those. And in my beginning process, I'll have a white piece of paper or a canvas, and I just start scribbling, basically. I just start making different marks on there. And I enjoy doing this smaller pieces on paper, but I especially love it on large canvases because it's a full body engagement in putting something out there that I know nobody's going to see. So it's this release of whatever I'm feeling. If I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling tension, or I'm feeling emotional in a way that isn't the happy emotional side, it's my way of putting it out there and taking it out of me, so that when I move forward to the next stage of my painting, which is to start applying paint, I can do that more freely. I can God, it's so hard to express. It's taking what's inside of me and pushing it out there and allowing it to flow out of me. So by doing that initial mark making, I can also get into the motion of moving my hands, and the whole motion of creating. It's kind of like when you are a football player, you do some warm-up exercises, or any sport. You're going to warm up a little bit. That's my warm-up. Nobody's going to see it, and that's what I love about it, because it can be anything. It doesn't matter what it is. It's out there, and it's going to get covered up, but I cannot create a painting without doing that. It's part of my process, and if I skip it, it throws me off. I have to go back and redo it. So I don't know if I answered your question correctly or not.
You did.
Having such,
it is an emotion. That was the point I was trying to get to, is there's an emotional component in your journey of being an artist, and the mark making is the initial step to clear any emotion that may block the forward motion. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's very much that. In addition to that, it's the just getting my body prepared to create.
I love that. Again, if people just go to betty.franks.art on Instagram, and you'll see some of her processes, and she also has a YouTube, which I will have links to. But I think there's it's a messiness in and of itself, right? Mark making is, she's not drawing something. She's literally just scribbling with whatever tool she's using, not paint yet. And I love that, because that's what I was trying to figure out when I first found out about mark making. Like, what's the point? Because I'm a processor and a thinker. And I think it goes just the opposite of what I was trying to do, is figure it out. It's not about that. It's literally just, it's like opening up the floodgates and allowing the first part of the mess to come out of your head, so that you're kind of clearing the air, I guess, creatively.
Yes, clearing the mind and the body to go. And interesting, in addition to that, is that the beginning stages, like you mentioned before, the messy part of the process. I believe that life is messy. There's this one commercial, it was for a vacuum cleaner. It was, "Life is messy, clean it up." I always loved that, because I love that first phrase. Life is messy, and getting that stuff out there, it's life. It's just part of life. And there's nothing pretty about that beginning stage of my painting. And I'd like to say there's nothing really pretty about my end stage. I don't really want to, quote unquote, create pretty paintings. I want to create paintings that evoke an emotion out of you. And the emotions that I'm hoping that you're going to get is joy and excitement and happiness and peace and tranquility, all of those things. But in those beginning stages, that is our life. And part of my process is creating all of the different layers. And I look at those layers as our journey in life. So there's a lot of messiness in there. There's stuff that gets covered up. I cover up areas. I leave some areas. It's just like going to a party and you meet people. You're not going to tell them all the bad things in your life, right? You're going to give them the cleaned up, the prettier versions. But as you get to know somebody, they start seeing all those first layers about you, those areas that are not so great, and they're a bit messy, but they're all part of you. They're part of the journey. They're part of your journey. And each one of my pieces of art is a journey from start to end, just like our lives are.
And how has art set you free? Because I believe it has set you free to be maybe a fuller version of yourself. Am I overstepping my assumption, or am I on point?
I would think, and I would hope, that I am a fuller version of myself. Definitely, like I said earlier, never in a million years would I have thought that I would be here at this point in my life where I am super happy. I look forward to waking up every day. I look forward to running my art business. I look forward to creating, and I look forward to being able to structure my day as I want it to be structured. I spent so many years working for somebody else who told me what time I should get up, what time I should show up to the office, what time I can have lunch, what time I can go home, that this is such a blessing for me. My number one goal every day is to not wake up to an alarm clock. And I haven't for several years now. And that, like, to me, that is such a huge blessing. And I am so grateful. Like every day I wake up and I just have that grateful feeling that I don't have an alarm clock I have to shut off. I can just go about my day when I'm ready to do that.
Mm. Now, as we come to the close of our conversation, what 3 takeaways would you like to share with my tribe as they think about what they might want to accomplish in this second half of their life?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of them we already talked about, which is drawing on your own life experiences as you enter your second half. You have so much that you have learned over the years, both good and bad, that you can apply. So don't feel like you're taking a giant step backwards by going in a new direction, because you have so much that you can already take with you. Mm-hmm. Now, the next thing that I feel is so important, and I discovered this over the years as well, is find your tribe. If you are an artist who likes to work with acrylic paints, find other artists that like to work with acrylic paints or any kind of paints. But I guess I'm somewhat narrowing it down so that you have such a tight connection with that person or with those folks that you are understood and you can talk about your experiences in the studio, your experiences with running your business, that you can get to a point where you just click with them. And it really, I've had so many people tell me that they feel so like an island and they're out there all by themselves. And by connecting with other folks, even just going on coffee dates, I find so energizing, like I'm ready to take on everything again. So find your tribe. They're out there and you can do that. You know, we're so grateful that we live in a time where we can connect virtually, but in person is so fantastic as well. And then I would say the last thing that I think is so key, and we talked about this too, is keep on learning. Every day, find something that you want to learn, whether you're listening to podcasts or audiobooks or reading something or watching YouTube videos, because YouTube is fantastic when it comes to learning that way. Have an open mind and open heart to learn. And I feel that that's going to push you forward a little bit faster than you would otherwise.
Betty, where can people find you?
Wow, I am all over the place. So you can find me certainly on my website, which is bettyfranksart.com. As we mentioned, I am on Instagram pretty much every single day, and my handle there is betty.franks.art. And then I'm on Facebook under Betty Franks Artist, and I'm on Pinterest. And certainly on YouTube. I have got a huge goal this year that I really want to grow my following on YouTube. I'd love to have you there if you haven't been there already. And you can find me under Betty Franks Art.
Even if you're not interested in art, it's lovely to spend time with Betty virtually, the way she paints, and she's very relaxed, and it's a very pleasant, it's like hanging out with a girlfriend. So I would highly encourage you. Betty, thank you so much for saying yes to this woman you don't know, slid into your DMs on Instagram, and how you showed up is exactly what I had hoped to accomplish. Is you did such a great job of sharing the realness of your journey, practical ways to do it, the courage and grace that it took. You're just as lovely as your art, and I'm so grateful that you said yes.
Oh, thank you, Gina. It has been such a pleasure chatting with you. And I love the whole, it's just girlfriends chit-chatting over coffee. And I love that feeling.
Yes, it is. And the point where you said about finding your tribe, my goodness, that particular conversation is so consistent with every single one of my guests. And so the very most important thing is we have to learn to reconnect with people and find those people, whether it's 2 people or 20 people. I find that most of the time it's a larger distant tribe, but there's 1 to 5 people, right, that you walk the journey with. Have you found that to be true?
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And it makes such a difference. So I want to thank you again for being on my show today. And friends, if you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 258, I will have all these links to Betty. So in case you weren't able to grab them quickly, but basically if you Google Betty Frank's art, you will find her. And like I said, go follow her, go watch that. Even if you're not an artist, it's inspiring to watch someone do something they love after the age of 50. And my point is, you can. It takes time. Lean in, trust the process, tell yourself better lies, and give yourself a shot, my friends. You have so much to offer in your midlife. So go after it, my friends. Let us know how you enjoyed this conversation. Reach out to Betty. Let her know what you got from what she shared today. Thank you for being here. We look forward to sharing more inspirational women and information with you in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. And bye-bye.